to Tea Time with Dakota. I'm here today with Miss Lilly Hiatt.
Hello.
And we're actually cheating. We're not drinking tea. We're drinking coffee, and she made the best cup of coffee I've had in a really long time. I was listening to your record on the way over, and one of the things I've been really interested in talking about with female artists is the idea that maybe one day you'll have children, or maybe you won't. And you have a line in the night David Bowie died.
Yes.
I was going to go to California, have a baby with you.
Yeah.
So, is that something that you think about?
It's definitely something I think about, and that's kind of a heavy line that I actually was thinking about the other night. I was like, whoa, I sing this all the time, but because you get used to it. But yeah, of course, I do think about it. Not obsessively. It's not something that weighs heavily, constantly on my mind, but it's something I consider and have in being involved in a relationship with somebody.
When I hear that song, is sort of like, and this could be my own projection, is this idea that what if I chose this life that's seemingly more normal, where I go and abandon whatever I'm doing now and just like have kids. I have a line in a song I'm writing right now where I'm like, maybe I'll just stay home and raise kids.
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, there's this myth put upon us, especially as women, that you can't have both. Not only can you not have a career in children, but the idea of doing something as seemingly non-traditional as music and having the audacity to have children, in my mind, I feel like that's nearly impossible, and I know it's because of external forces that are like feeding me that information.
Yeah.
Is that what you feel like sometimes? Like, is that what you felt like when you wrote it? Like, oh shit, maybe I gotta give this up and just like go be a mom.
To me, that ideology of having to give one thing up for another, I just don't subscribe to it. I really don't. It's not an option for me. So even though there are all these outside, I think a lot of that can be self-imposed limitation at some point, where it's like, yeah, there's all sorts of stereotypes and expectations, but you don't have to adhere to any of them, really, and that's like gives you the freedom. But that line was more about being at the time in a place of deep desperation and wanting to do anything I could to bridge some sort of gap, and kind of outside of my music, because those things are they can exist separately to me,
Yeah.
So I that being said, like, yes, of course it's incredibly hard to be. I can only imagine the strength it takes to be a mother and have a full-on career, or a father and have a full-on career, just a parent. Because I have so many friends, and I grew up with that world, and a lot of musicians I know are family people, you know, and they just are.
Do you feel like your perspective on that whole paradigm has a lot to do with who your dad is? You grew up as a child of a musician, so you're like, yeah, no, you can do that.
Yeah, well, I also grew up knowing Roseanne Cash and her kids, and she is 4, and she has no problem doing her thing, know, and she has had a lot, to carry forward with her name alone, so I know all that's possible, and I have for a long time. I'm like, I grew up around kids of musicians, and we had our parents, and they went on the road, and they came home, and they did their best, But, I also think I know a little bit about the sacrifice that the whole lifestyle entails.
Yeah.
That we live, being artists. So, and that is a sacrifice. But, for better or worse,
right.
It's an alternative lifestyle, certainly.
It is quite alternative.
It is,
and
So.
We don't, I think, for me, I didn't grow up with anybody that played music or had a job in the arts at all. So I think I sort of compare my lifestyle to those of my friends' parents that were very structured.
Yeah.
And had a lot of income coming in. And they did the same thing every day. And I know that I don't want that, But in my mind, I've sort of bought into this idea that that's really the only way to have a legitimate lifestyle. And even saying it out loud, I know it's ridiculous, but I do think it's really nice to, like, for example, witness, like, Margot Price's Instagram story where she's on the road with her baby, and I'm like, oh, hey, there you go.
Totally.
You can do that.
You can, and it's really inspiring, and it's also like, you know, and I'm like still thinking about Roseanne. I'm like, I'm pretty sure Roseanne she has a son now too. Like, well, growing up, she had daughters, and yeah, so she has a big family, you know, and their dad is a musician too. Some of those kids, so it's like they had two parents doing it, you know. But yeah, like Margot and Jeremy, like they're both musicians. Their kids are growing up around that, and it's got to take incredible strength to birth a child and then mere months later perform in front of thousands of people. Like, the courage that takes just on its own is, you know, immense. So then given the whole, like, motherhood thing and having a new baby, like, I can only imagine. And yes, it is inspiring. And when you see that, you're like, okay, like, you can do this. Because it is different for women. We have to, like, our body, it becomes someone else's body for that time, you know. I'm sure I can't even imagine what that experience would be like, because I've never been pregnant, you know. But I bet it's really intense.
And it changes forever. Like,
you
never get things back.
It changes things, but I think it, you know, all the people I know that are mothers and fathers, like, it seems to have changed their life for the better.
I'm not pregnant, let me just say. I think about this, though, because my body wants to be pregnant.
Yeah.
I like your philosophy of not worrying about it too much. And just sort of like,
In terms of, I mean, I worry all the time, but in terms of planning my life, I'm like, I don't know.
We don't fucking work out.
I'm like, I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
And everybody's different. You know, not everybody wants the same things. And I think another thing is, as a woman, like, you shouldn't be expected to want a family.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
So what do you worry about? What's
everything
that weighs heavy on your heart?
Pretty much everything, the whole world, all the time. I get a heavy heart easily, but I also have a pretty bright attitude overall, I think.
Yeah.
But you know, what not the rapid change of cities across America worries me, having spent a lot of time traveling in them. The displacement of people from lesser income brackets worries me. And the U.S. is pretty funky. So, I don't know.
It's heavy.
It is really heavy, and it does taint. It's definitely set an interesting mood, and I think a lot of good's coming out of that. But there's also been a lot of ugly unveiled. That's horrifying. And it does affect things. It does affect the day-to-day energy of people, you know? So that makes me sad, because I feel like there's this kind of understanding of just extremity and extreme belittling of all sorts from all angles, and I think that's really counterproductive and really toxic.
Yeah, it's like...
So it bleeds in, you know?
Yeah, and it brings out what separates us as opposed to what connects us.
Yeah.
And something I really struggle with is, with social media, we're more connected than ever, but you don't actually feel that human connection.
Yes.
I can get myself in a really dark place by going on social media.
Of course.
This, like, whole comparison thing. And in reality, like, the people that I'm looking at and comparing myself to are probably really great people, and if I were able to sit and have a cup of coffee with them, we would jive.
Totally. No, it's hard. I was thinking about this the other night, like, my relationship with people online versus my real... I have to consistently remind myself, like, try to take it lightly, because it's really isn't real. Nothing replaces human interaction, and nothing can, you know? So it's like we can, like, recreate all these little pathways that make us, you know, associate this with that via whatever the hell our phones are, like, engaging us in. And it's necessary, and you can... Some days I can take it so much lighter than others, where I'm like, this is a blast, you know? Yeah. I'm going to story my life. I'm going to, like, curate a little thing, and it's really fun, and it gives you, like, power in your hands to kind of, like,
tell your story.
Do your thing, exactly. And that's really cool if you can look at it like when I'm coming at it from like an artistic, lighthearted angle.
Yeah.
But when it starts getting like to be what I base my relationships with people off of, that's when it gets like dangerous to me. Or if I have some sort of expectation with it, because I'm like, this isn't real. This doesn't even come close. Like the feeling you get when you get a ton of likes is pretty exciting. You're like, yeah, people are watching, but it doesn't come close to like the fulfillment of like a heartfelt connection with a human. You know, that leaves you like breathless because you're just like, wow, like we understood each other in that moment and had a great talk. So I just try to remember that because I'm like, nothing can replace that. But it does create this idea of like we need to get validated a lot, and it's changed the way I've thought in the past few years. My Instagram used to have a lot of like artsy pictures and shit on it, and now like 90% of the pictures are me because that's what people respond to. And it's intoxicating in a way, you know, if I'm being frank about it. So it's like, well, I guess I'll put another one of me out, you know. I would love to show you the sunset, but
you're not gonna
nobody
like that.
seems to care.
Right.
But who cares, you know? That's the thing. So it's, social media can get weird.
I've heard rumors that may or may not be rumors that like people with high numbers on their social media accounts will just get like plucked out of the world by these like big label execs and turned into like artists.
Oh, I don't know.
Like,
I wouldn't not believe. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
I think that might be. I think there are people that have they're really great at social media, and that's like something that they excel at.
Yes.
And they may also be really great musicians.
Totally.
But I'm not good at social media. It's not.
You're pretty good. I see you, in my opinion, but I understand feeling.
Do you know
that
what I
way.
mean? You feel like
I'm like, I don't know how to play this game.
I don't feel like I know how to play it either.
This game. I just fling it out there.
Right, and so I feel like, oh no, within this new paradigm of the music industry, will I not be counted for? Because do you ever have fears like that?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up because actually, like, I'll have weeks where I'm like, you know, I need to unplug a little. I need to like not story. I need to not like get the dopamine feel that Instagram gives me. Like sometimes you need to disconnect from and not feel like eyes are on you. But then it's like you'll get this fear, like if you're not participating, that you might be forgotten or taken out of the running. And I don't think that's real. I've thought a lot about that. I'm like, you know, I think that's what they want. They being whoever the hell, the bad people that are trying to make us little puppets that are at the head of everything.
Oh my god.
But I think that's the whole thing. Like, I don't think anything like that is ever created for the people. You know, it's like ultimately there's some.
It's control.
And maybe I'm getting conspiracy, but it always feels controlling. And it's always updating to be more controlling. And for you to feel like you must have it. And I don't think you have to, you know. But I do get it because it's like, hey, if you don't put this stuff out on Instagram, like, everybody watches that. That's where people see stuff. That is, to me, Instagram is like, if you're not gramming, you better be, like, famous already or just, like, have a whole thing you've cultivated outside of that. Because that's how word spreads, you know. But I think there's a way, because I follow a lot of different people on it, and everybody's got their own touch. Some people, like, are at it all the time, and some people, like, aren't so much, and they still, I didn't forget about them, you know, like, just because I didn't see a billion things, because I'm like, I like them, like, you know, so I think it's just, I think we freak out and think we have to have all this content, you know.
Because I do feel that I'm like, I just want to delete Instagram for a couple days, but oh god, what if I'm forgotten about?
I know.
As if there's all these music executives like, well, Dakota hasn't posted in a while.
I think that same thing. I'll like get like 3 days in and be like, I have to check, and then it's like I check and like nothing's.
It's just becomes.
It's fine.
Yeah.
You know, like it's fine. That's why I think so much of it is self. Like it creates this inner anxiety of like FOMO and like I have to like be seen.
Yeah.
And, you know, it takes a little of the mystery out of things, which is such a beautiful part of artistry, you know? So it's kind of leaves it up to us how much we want to reveal. You know?
And being still with yourself and not having eyes on you is critical for creativity.
It is.
And
totally.
sometimes I find myself when I'm like sitting writing a song, Which I do enjoy sharing. Like, I've gotten into the habit of, like, sharing little, like, quotes or, like, lyrics that I've come up with.
Which is cool.
In addition to, like, photos of me.
Yeah.
Of
course,
but
though.
Sometimes I don't.
People in.
Right, but sometimes I forget how to just, like, sit and be with myself and not be like, ooh, I should share this story.
I know, I totally get it. And
like,
that's why
I have to have instant validation or something.
I know. I had a few years back, before stories or anything, I think it was like 2013. So it wasn't quite where it's at, but I was dating someone that was like a pretty, like, older than me, and he was like, man, your generation's so cool, like, y'all are all plugged into this stuff, and you know, it's really hip that everybody, like, is sharing. And I was like, it's actually incredibly stressful.
Do you ever feel like some days you just want to pull the plug on the whole music idea and just, like, go get a secure job?
Ha!
Big heavy quotations.
Well,
and, like, 9 to 5 it. You know what I mean?
I do. I would never want to have a 9 to 5. I would legit die. But this has been my little fantasy of the times where I've been scared. Like, my fantasy is more pulling off the grid, living in some little freaking town where I hardly see anybody. Mm. And I, like, somehow have a life where I can write and play my songs and still get by, and maybe I work at, like, a little, like, shell shop by the beach. That's my little escapist. But I also am very aware that, like, I cannot survive without performing. So I'm like, it's really not an option, but maybe, like, at some point in my life I can afford to, like, take a summer where I just lay real low.
You
like,
could.
by the ocean and, like, do not a lot, but...
And,
like,
just write so many songs.
And, like, take walks and, like, eat berries and, like, look at birds, you know?
Yeah.
So... But the 9 to 5 thing is not for me, and I've worked a lot of jobs in addition to being a musician. Never have I worked a 9 to 5, and I really don't think I could.
Yeah, it's not good. I tried.
How
it
about
recently.
you?
Well, so like I said, I grew up comparing myself to all these, like, secure family, the ideal family, right?
Yeah.
And I always thought maybe I should try a job where I have benefits and I have a 401k and it's 9 to 5. I did it for 6 months.
Yeah.
It was actually a very flexible job. They were super cool with my touring and everything that was going on with music, but I still felt so suffocated.
Yeah.
Like, having to go somewhere every single day, driving in traffic.
Oh, I know.
I do not know how these beautiful people sit in traffic every morning and every night.
I know. I think
it's
about
so,
that.
Like, soul...
It is
separating.
No, it takes a really strong... I've, like, talked about that with my dad, and it's like, we're lucky in our lives that we don't have to deal with that shit, because that is hard. And, like, to then go home to your family or whatever and be like, here I am after, like, a 9-hour day and then sitting in traffic and, like, you know, that is hard. And I have some friends that do that, and they do it gracefully, and they're incredible. And they have, like, a certain stability in their life via that, but also I know that takes a certain strength a different kind of strength than I have, you know, just as my job might take a little different than someone else, you know. It's like, and I understand, like, of course there have been times where I'm like, oh, like, you know, this life certainly doesn't provide a ton of stability, especially initially, but I think it can lead to it, you know. But yeah, like you, it's like I wouldn't know any other way, and I would feel suffocated if I wasn't on the go and on a stage, you know? Right. So, like, if I'm home too long, I go insane. So, it's just like, I have to move, you know?
How long have you, so I had a breakdown moment yesterday where I haven't toured a ton. I toured some in college. This incarnation of what I do now, we just got off of a 10-day tour, which is nothing.
But that's a good tour. That's enough to be like, you're going.
And I was so fulfilled and in my power every day, even when, like, there was, like, a shitty promoter or whatever. And I woke up yesterday with this feeling of, like, when you're home and you're just sort of doing the, like, busy work, the emailing and all of that, and before you really get on a good footing where you can have a booking agent and be touring. You just have to sustain yourself with the memory. I had the blues big time.
I get it.
Yesterday. Are you able to, you go out quite frequently at this point. How long have you been consistently touring like that?
I know exactly how you feel, and I think like the time that touring got like the most busy was like, well, I feel like once Trinity Lane came out, which was 2017, even though it's like I've toured for years, but not like consistently. I always would like come home, like I was working at Whole Foods, or I was working baristing at headquarters, which was so awesome. I would go for clumps and come back and go, but then once Trinity Lane happened, it was just like we were gone, like pretty much we were on the go. And the times at home, it actually made me more grateful for the times at home.
So, given that your dad was a songwriter, do you feel like you were able to approach writing songs and pursuing that type of career path because you witnessed him doing it successfully?
Yes, totally. I mean, I think it's something I took on my own because it was a need that I just had to write. But I don't think I had any doubts about, like, you can do this for your life. Like,
Yeah.
And I guess, I got that through living with someone that did,
Right.
So I'm like, there's yellow legal pads piled high around my house. Like, that's what you do. Like, you just write. And, yeah, that can be a part of things, and probably should be a part of things. That's kind of how I came to understand it, so.
Right. I like that idea of witnessing that as sort of like a practice.
Yeah. Totally.
Because it is so important. Like when we were talking about, all the things going on with the world and with climate change and with like how separate we feel these days. I was going to ask you if you have like a spiritual practice or any type of practice, and is writing one of those for you? Because I know writing is one of those for me.
Definitely, it is, and I love hearing that, and I love talking about it with people because it's so simple and powerful. It's like constantly blows my mind. Not even to be precious about my own writing, just the process of it, and the more I lean into it, the more grace I give myself with it. Like, it doesn't always have to be like, you must write a song to process or connect or whatever. Sometimes I'll just write. I've gotten more back into journaling, and sometimes I'll just write stuff down on paper, but that is a spiritual part of things, for sure. And as are, quite a few, I love spending time outside is really important to me. And being around trees is really important to me.
Where do you go? Do you go to Shelby?
I do go to Shelby a lot. That's probably my main jam. I like my place because it's kind of like in this nook. And even though
it's like a tree house. You can't see, but it's a tree house.
It is kind of like a tree house, and that's actually my dream, to live in a tree house. But even though unfortunately these woods have a lot of litter in them, I can like look out of the windows and just like see, or go on my deck and just like stare at the trees. But yeah, Shelby, Beeman, walk around the neighborhood a lot.
Yeah.
That in combination with writing, just like exposing myself to nature in some way keeps me in a good place if I'm like doing that, so.
Do you feel like, since you've been a bit more established with, you have a team now with more skin in the game, when all of that began to really take off for you, did you struggle at all with pressure to write that maybe created a disconnect with your creative process? Do you know what I'm saying?
I totally know what you're saying. And it's funny, like, I've definitely had many times where I felt pressured, but most of that has always come from me.
Right.
So if I've I feel like I say this, and I know there's plenty more eras of writer's block to happen, but I don't know. I understand that. I kind of like feel more the flow of things, and like I allow myself a little more leeway in terms of like, when you have a new album and when you're touring it hard and you're like hyper focused on your band and your thing and whatever, like it might not be the time when you're like plugged into, but that being said, you know, plugged into a place where you're just, your output of songs are, you know, like just, you know, spilling from you. But I've come to understand that all that feeds into the next wave, because I write a lot, but there's waves of time. I don't know how you are,
absolutely.
but you know, where you're just like, I'm deeply inspired and I can't stop. You know, I can't stop writing. But
and then sometimes you're absorbing.
And sometimes, exactly, you're taking in what goes into that. And so for me, it's kind of like a free-flowing thing. It's not happening, it's not happening. But that being said, a little diligence and practice is important, you know.
Giving yourself a bit of structure.
Yeah, you have to. And it's like, even if you're writing crap, like, whatever, just get it out sometimes, you know. If it's been a little too long for me, I'm like, you should write some stuff. But I've also had eras where I'm like, I can't stop. I can't stop writing. It just happens, you know.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I didn't mean to go all in, but I've never really felt super pressured from outside forces to like create, because I know that I get to a place after a while where I'm like, you gotta like get some new songs going, you know, like, or else I get bored, you know, and I have to like get that stuff out.
Now we're going to go to the Spill the Tea segment. This is when I ask you a series of questions.
Oh yes, this part. Okay.
And you answer just as soon as you can. Okay. Your favorite method of self-care is?
Taking walks.
Taking walks. We discussed Shelby Bottoms. I used to live walking distance to Shelby, and it's like my church. And now I don't live walking distance
Shelby
there.
is like a church.
It's really special.
It is. Or a temple or whatever. It's a sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Shelby Bottoms, East Nashville.
Shelby Bottoms.
Okay.
Walking distance, that's golden. I wish I was walking distance.
What is your longest standing negative emotional pattern?
My longest standing negative emotional pattern is putting a wall up.
Oh, putting a wall up. Poppy's ready to go outside.
I know, she's fine. She's like, it's getting heavy in here.
Oh, my mom always puts up walls.
I know. Poppy, I'll let you out in a sec. I will.
Okay. What is a dream that you've ever felt ashamed to admit?
A dream.
Like a dream for your life.
A dream for my life okay, here's one. I want to be like a little rich, but like not in a gross way, but like I want some dough. And you know, I'm not super materialistic, so.
I was just having this
But
conversation.
I think it's hard for me to admit that. You know, I'm like, I want a little bit, you know.
Because you don't want people to think that this is so crazy that you said this. I was just having this conversation. A lady had a huge realization that she's always been afraid to admit that she wanted money because when she was little, her uncle called her a gold digger.
Oh, that's intense. And that's an intense thing to call a little kid.
I know. And I have that too, where I'm afraid to admit it, but really it would be nice to have that comfort and security.
Yeah.
And so I pretend.
I don't want copious gobs of cash, but like, yeah, I want a nice life, and I want to be able to like take nice vacations, and I also want to be able to do good things with my money for society. So like, yeah.
Absolutely.
Glad we cracked into that.
That's a great one.
Go.
I love that one. The biggest lie you've bought into about having a career in music?
The biggest lie that I've bought into about having a career in music is that you have to be something for somebody else. I don't think, you know, I don't know. I've never really like tried to pander to anyone, but I think I've gotten in my head before of I'm not this or that enough, and that is why. Mm-hmm. And that is just not true. So
yeah,
you don't have to feel like you're lacking. You know, it's just like
you have a different story to tell than anyone else in the world.
Exactly. You just got to get into that story.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
So
it's a good one.
Yeah.
Last one. Describe a time when you almost gave up.
Okay, a time where I almost gave up was in Philadelphia. I played a show. I had a horrible night. I won't even go into the specifics, just the vibe was rough. And I woke up the next morning and I was in a really like weird place in my life. My second album was out and I felt like nobody cared, and my personal life was kind of falling apart, and I felt very overwhelmed. And I remember I texted my friend Angel Snow, who's an amazing musician, and that was the only time in my life I've ever said, like, I might have to take a break from music. And I don't remember exactly what she said, but her response was pensive, but also something about it was kind of like, just think about it. And
yeah.
so that, it didn't last long. And what I really needed to do was just change some things in my life to reinforce my own strength. But that time in Philly was about like 4 years ago, maybe.
Oh my God. I'm so glad you didn't give up.
No, me too. Giving up sucks, It never
Yeah.
feels good. So, on something that, means something to you. So, yeah.
Well, thanks for tuning in to Tea Time.
Yeah,
Miss Lilly Hiatt. Go
Thank
listen
you.
to her records. She's an incredible writer.
There was country